The story of evolution begins with the emergence of simple cellular life on Earth. These early life forms had different metabolic capabilities, giving them varied chances of survival. Microbes, for instance, reproduce rapidly, millions can form within hours. Think of a group of bacteria growing on food. Some of them are better at using one part of the food than others. If the medium changes, only the variants suited to the new environment survive. These survivors multiply faster and eventually dominate, forming a new population, possibly even a new species, within days. But for longer lived organisms, like fish or birds, this process takes millions of years. Why? Because their life cycles are much longer. In this scenario, we say the surviving population is more fit. And what defines fitness? Fitness is based on inherited characteristics, traits passed down genetically. So, adaptation, the ability to survive in a hostile environment, is also inherited. So, simply put, fitness is the result of adaptation and natural selection. Moving on to Charles Darwin, he gave us two important ideas to explain how life changes over time. The first is branching descent. This means that all living things, no matter how different they look today, like birds, fish, or humans, came from a common ancestor a long time ago. Over time, as these early life forms changed and adapted, they split into new species, just like branches growing from the same tree. The second idea is natural selection. This means that nature chooses the best traits, the ones that help an animal or plant survive better. For example, a rabbit with stronger legs may run faster from predators and is more likely to survive and have babies. These helpful traits get passed on, and over time, the whole group may start to have stronger legs. So, according to Darwin, life changes slowly over time, and those changes happen through branching from ancestors and selection by nature. But before Darwin, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck had his own theory. Lamarck proposed a different idea that traits acquired during life could be passed on. For instance, he believed giraffes developed long necks by stretching for leaves. While interesting, this theory was later disproven. Now, here's an interesting question: is evolution a process or a result? The world we see today, plants, animals, even humans, is the successful result of evolution. But when we tell the story of how life developed, we treat evolution as an ongoing process driven by mechanisms like natural selection. We are still debating whether natural selection is a cause, a result, or part of an even deeper process we haven't fully uncovered yet. Let's discuss natural selection in detail. Darwin's idea of natural selection was shaped by some factual observations. Natural resources are limited. Populations tend to remain stable despite the potential to grow. Individuals within a population vary in their characteristics. Many of these variations are inherited. If everyone reproduced maximally, populations would grow exponentially, as seen in bacteria. But in reality, population sizes remain limited. This leads to competition for resources. Some survive, others don't. But makes some survive better than others. One reason is heritable variation. Heritable variations that help some individuals use resources better allow them to leave more offspring. Over many generations, this changes the makeup of the population and eventually gives rise to new species. But what creates variation in the first place? Interestingly, though Gregor Mendel discovered the principles of inheritance through his pea plant experiments, Darwin never fully integrated Mendel's ideas into his theory. In the early 1900s, Hugo de Vries introduced a new concept. Based on his work with the evening primrose, he proposed that mutations, sudden, large changes in traits, drive evolution. De Vries proposed that mutations are random and directionless, meaning new heritable changes appear suddenly without environmental influence. He also suggested speciation can occur in a single step, saltation, through large mutations, contrasting with the gradual view of evolution. This was different from Darwin's view, which emphasized small, gradual, directional variations over long periods. So, who was right? Later, studies in population genetics brought clarity. Evolution isn't just about gradual changes or sudden mutations, it can involve both. All of these factors together drive the mechanism of evolution. From Darwin to De Vries, from giraffes to microbes, evolution helps us understand the rich diversity of life. Next, we'll break down the Hardy-Weinberg principle. This principle states that allele frequencies in a population remain stable from generation to generation, provided certain conditions are met. This is known as genetic equilibrium. The gene pool stays constant. In diploid organism, let P be the frequency of dominant allele A and Q for recessive allele A, then the genotype frequencies are dominant A into dominant A is P square. Dominant A into recessive A is to PQ. Recessive A into recessive A is Q square. These add up as a binomial expansion, P plus Q whole square is equal to P square plus to PQ plus Q square is equal to 1. In simple terms, the total frequency of all alleles always equals 1. Let's quickly understand how natural selection changes traits in a population using this graph. In the center, we see stabilizing selection. Here, nature favors the average, like medium-sized individuals, so the peak gets higher and narrower. In directional selection, shown on the right, the peak shifts toward one extreme. This happens when one trait, say, longer legs or sharper claws, gives a survival advantage. Finally, in disruptive selection, seen at the bottom, both extremes are favored. The curve splits, forming two peaks, which can eventually lead to new species. So, natural selection can stabilize, shift, or split traits, driving evolution in different ways. The Hardy-Weinberg principle tells us when a population's genetic makeup stays constant over time. But in real life, that rarely happens. Why? Because several factors can disturb this balance. First, genetic drift. Genetic drift means that sometimes, by pure luck, the genes in a small group can change over time. Next, mutation. Mutations are sudden changes in DNA that introduce new genes into the population. Then comes genetic recombination. It happens during reproduction, when genes mix and create new combinations of traits. Natural selection is another factor. It favors individuals with traits that help them survive and reproduce, changing gene frequencies over time. Finally, gene migration. When individuals move between populations, they bring in new genes or take some away. All these factors can shift the genetic balance, meaning the population is no longer in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. One special case of genetic drift is the founder's effect. Let's see how that works. When a population moves to a new location, gene frequencies change in both the original and new populations. New genes are introduced, while others are lost. Gene flow. If this migration happens multiple times, it creates a constant flow of genes between the populations, called gene flow. Genetic drift. Sometimes, the same changes happen by chance, leading to a phenomenon called genetic drift. This can cause the new population to become so different that they become a new species. So this is the founder effect. The original drifted population becomes founders. Let's jump onto natural selection and speciation. Microbial experiments demonstrate how advantageous mutations, when selected, lead to new phenotypes. Natural selection is the process where heritable variations that improve survival enable greater reproductive success and more offspring. Variation arises through mutation, genetic recombination, gene flow, or genetic drift, changing gene frequencies in subsequent generations. Natural selection can be stabilizing, favoring mean values, directional, shifting toward new values, or disruptive, favoring extreme values at both ends of the distribution. Let's take a journey back in time, way back to around 2000 million years ago. This was when the first cellular forms of life appeared on Earth. How exactly non-living macromolecules turned into living cells with membranes? We still don't know for sure. But what we do know is that some of these early cells could release oxygen, a process likely similar to the light reaction in photosynthesis, where sunlight splits water using special pigments. As time passed, these simple, single-celled organisms slowly evolved into more complex, multicellular life forms. Fast forward to around 500 million years ago, invertebrates were already active. By 350 million years ago, jawless fish had appeared. Around 320 million years ago, seaweeds and some of the earliest plants had started to grow. Interestingly, it was plants that first made the move from water to land. Once they spread across land, animals soon followed. Fish with strong, sturdy fins were the first. They could crawl onto land and return to water. This happened around 350 million years ago. Then came a big discovery in 1938. A strange fish was caught off the coast of South Africa. It was a coelacanth, believed to be extinct. These lobefin fish were the ancestors of the first amphibians, animals that could live both in water and on land. These early amphibians eventually gave rise to frogs and salamanders we see today. Over time, amphibians evolved into reptiles. Unlike amphibians, reptiles laid thick-shelled eggs that didn't dry up in the sun, a huge advantage on land. Today's turtles, tortoises, and crocodiles are descendants of these early reptiles. For the next 200 million years, reptiles ruled the earth. Some of them even returned to the oceans, evolving into fish-like reptiles like the ichthyosaurs, around 200 million years ago. On land, they evolved into the mighty dinosaurs. Among them, the Tyrannosaurus rex stood out, towering 20 feet tall with massive, sharp teeth. But about 65 million years ago, dinosaurs suddenly vanished. Why? We are still not sure. It could have been climate change, or perhaps some of them evolved into birds. Maybe both. While the dinosaurs faded away, mammals began to rise. The first mammals were tiny and looked like shrews. Being viviparous, they gave birth to live young and protected them inside the mother's body. They were also smarter and better at avoiding danger. As reptiles declined, mammals spread out. In South America, unique mammals like early horses, rabbits, and bear-like animals lived. But when South America connected with North America, many of them were replaced by northern species. In contrast, Australia remained isolated. That's why pouched mammals, or marsupials like kangaroos, survived there. They had no competition from other mammals. And let's not forget, some mammals returned to the water too. Whales, dolphins, seals, and sea cows all evolved from land-dwelling ancestors. Animals like the horse, elephant, and dog have their own special stories of evolution. But the most fascinating of all is the evolution of humans, beings with language, intelligence, and self-awareness. About 15 million years ago, primates like Dryopithecus and Rumpithecus lived. Dryopithecus looked more like apes, while Rumpithecus was more man-like. Fossils found in Ethiopia and Tanzania suggest that around 3 to 4 million years ago, man-like primates began walking upright in East Africa. They were about 4 feet tall. By around 2 million years ago, Australopithecines were living in African grasslands. They likely used stone tools and ate fruits. Some of their fossils were different. These were called the first human-like beings, known as Homo habilis, with a brain size of 650 to 800 cubic centimeters. They probably didn't eat meat. The next stage in evolution came with Homo erectus, whose fossils were found in Java in 1891. These early humans lived about 1.5 million years ago and had a brain size of around 900 cubic centimeters. They likely ate meat. Then came the Neanderthals, who lived between 100,000 to 40,000 years ago in part of Asia. With brain sizes of 1,400 cubic centimeters, they used animal hides for warmth and even buried their dead. Finally, Homo sapiens, modern humans, arose in Africa. They spread across the world, forming different races. During the Ice Age, between 75,000 and 10,000 years ago, our ancestors created cave art like those found in Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh. About 10,000 years ago, agriculture began. Humans started forming settlements. And from there, the history of civilization, with all its rise and fall, began. We hope that you have understood the topic. You can now study chapter notes, watch video lectures and solve MCQ tests of this chapter on EduRev to ensure you score well in your exams. And that's not all. You also get amazing courses for maths, science, English, Hindi, and much more for NEET. Thank you.